Hello and welcome to this podcast of the e-commerce practitioners. I've got another wonderful guest with me this time, James Ewens from a company which manages multiple brands. And we're going to talk about various aspects involved into how do you go about managing multiple brands from the within business. Welcome to the podcast, James, and thanks for doing this. Would appreciate if we can get started with your introduction and then we kick off.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Japan. So I'm James. I have worked in the e-commerce space for, coming up on 16 years now. Been doing it for a long time. I've worked both on the vendor side and obviously a lot of my time has been spent client side. My most recent project, and you said, is running the Open 24/7 business, which has four distinct online brands that sell four different products. And I'm the e-commerce director here, so I can look after all of the tech and the execution of his online strategy and the marketing. So yeah, like running one brand, but times it by four. It can be a bit busy.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you end up from being on the vendor side to a customer side? How did that transition happen?
I actually started customer side. So I was originally, my e-commerce journey started back in 2009, 2008, working as sort of listings, I guess you would call it a listings manager nowadays. So the early days of, SEO and PPC and optimization for websites there. Then I moved to the vendor side and joined Brightpearl. So I was a technical account manager at Brightpearl for 4 years, 3 years, something like that. And that kind of gave me the insight into how other brands are using technology to propel their businesses forward. Actually, one of my customers at Brightpearl reached out and said, you're helping us a lot on the Brightpearl side. Do you just want to come work for us? So obviously I took that opportunity. That was with Furniture Box. I helped lead the Furniture Box team through their growth phase with the Bristol tech team, as we called it, which was kind of the growth of the kind of front end staff for Furniture Box. So Furniture Box had massive growth through COVID. They'd built up a really, really good sort of back end team. So customer service, fulfilment, warehousing, operations. What they didn't have is that sort of front facing marketing team and the e-commerce team that would then propel the growth on. And I kind of came in to help lead that sort of growth team, if you like. And that was again off the back of Brightpearl. So Furniture Box was using Brightpearl. Obviously I was their technical account manager at Brightpearl, so it was kind of a natural evolution from the Brightpearl work. And stayed there for 3 years, led that team growth, opened a new warehouse with them, managed a migration to a whole new website, moving away from Magento. So yeah, we did a lot of things, but I kind of got to the end of that journey. And I'd kind of done the two biggest projects really that I thought I could achieve. Launching a new website is massive. Launching a new warehouse is massive. So I sort of felt like I'd kind of done everything that I could do there.
Mhm.
And the opportunity came over to come and work at Open 24/7 and manage the multiple brands here. And I sort of thought it was the right time to have a new challenge. But yeah, I seem to have had my life formed by the various different challenges that I take on. I think for this year, I'm going to do less challenges and more relaxation, I think.
Yeah. Well, you can't blame anybody for having a wishful thinking.
So, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think has your background from a technology perspective, being a technical account manager, has helped you transition to this particular role where you are managing different vendors, different technologies, and potentially different, brands as well?
Yeah, so I think I've always been techie. I grew up around computing and gaming, and the technical aspect of computing has always been something that's kind of been a passion of mine. So it, it kind of comes fairly naturally to me because I've just done it my whole life. So it's not really something that I've had to learn necessarily. It's just kind of been the way it is. Certainly from a complexity standpoint, I mean, I've been involved in some very, very complex tech stacks, and the tech stack that we have here is relatively complex too. And I think it's having that understanding from the vendor side of how things work. And I know I've only worked at one tech company, but I do think there's an awful lot of crossover with how tech companies are generally managed and generally work. So I think the knowledge that I took from Brightpearl around how a tech partner might want to integrate or might want to roll out a feature or might want to think about how a feature is developed, I kind of already know that now. So I think that puts me in a quite nice position that I kind of know when somebody's lying to me, and I kind of know when somebody is perhaps overselling what a service can do. So I think that's been really valuable. And I also think that just from a technical aspect of understanding what the limitations on things like APIs are, knowing where the limits could be, knowing where something's likely to break, then when something does break, like I'm kind of already prepared for it because I knew it was going to break. So I think that definitely helps. But I think wider than that, it's the wider interest in tech, right? I think I'm always looking for, I kind of always got my finger on the buzzer. I'm always looking for opportunities where tech can make my life or one of my members of staff's life easier. And so I think that's just learned behavior, right? Like you don't sort of forget how to do that. You just keep doing it.
Absolutely. It almost becomes like a second nature.
Exactly. Yeah. For better or worse, it becomes a second nature. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So just before we proceed further, James, it would be good to understand what are these different brands that you're handling as part of Open 24/7. How many brands are there? What exactly are, and what exactly is the specific space?
Yeah. So we have 4 brands, different brands. So our main brand is an outdoor nature camera business called Greenfeathers. And Greenfeathers is predominantly the idea of putting cameras into your habitats that you would have in your garden. So bird boxes, hedgehog houses, chicken coops, lizard enclosures, cat kennels, dog kennels, like anywhere that you would want to view inside a habitat. That's kind of what we do. So that's the main brand. That's our sort of our golden egg, if you like. It's the brand that we've put the most time and effort into over the past 18 months. And it's quite a fun brand as well because by its very nature, it's sustainable. It's the whole point of the brand is to get nature back into your garden. So, it is a sustainable purpose, which is quite nice to be on board with. The second brand is kind of the companion brand to that, which is called CloseWatch. And CloseWatch is an evolution of the idea of wildlife watching to integrate that into farming. So that's things like calving cameras, lambing cameras, foaling cameras. So the idea of if you had a farm and your farmhouse was a mile away from your lambing barn, instead of having to get up at 3 a.m. and go drive over to the lambing barn to see what the lambs are doing or what the sheep are doing, you can view it on your mobile phone or your tablet or your computer or whatever, and then see what's happening in the shed without having to go to the shed. So it's the idea of trying to make farmers' lives a bit easier. Then the other brands that kind of spawned the kind of whole idea from that is called Spy Camera CCTV, and that originally was sort of a pure home installation based CCTV company. So we would provide CCTV for people that maybe didn't have the budget to go and get a professional installer to do it. We tried to make CCTV accessible for everybody. Spy Camera was the first brand that we had, and that brand spawned the idea of CloseWatch and spawned the idea of Greenfeathers because we had a lot of customers buying our home CCTV kit and then putting it in environments like a bird box or like a hedgehog box or like a kennel. And then they were also using the long range wireless kit for the farming application. So instead of sort of vicariously selling through Spy Camera, we spun off the 2 extra brands to be a bit more focused on this brand sells this product and instead of it being more general like Spy Camera was. And then the final brand we have is totally different, completely separate, is an outdoor furniture brand. So really, really high-end garden furniture called Alexander Francis. Roughly connected with the idea of Greenfeathers because the idea would be that you would have your habitat or you'd have your camera in your garden and then you'd have some lovely garden furniture that you could sit on. And if you were lucky enough to have nature in your garden, you could sit on your nice furniture and watch the animal. But roughly connected, a little bit of a stretch.
I like you connected that.
And basically the idea is that the Greenfeathers is on season really from sort of October through to April. So it has 6 months of busy period because you've got the birding season, you've got the Christmas gifting season, sort of the spring idea with spring watch and stuff being very popular now. Then when you get past April, then you're in garden furniture season. So the idea is that the garden furniture props up the Greenfeathers business when it's off season. So we kind of treat the two businesses as like seasonal businesses, and then Spy Camera and Close Watch kind of all year round, just a little steady earner alongside the kind of two peaks that you have with the other two brands. So yeah, it's a fairly complex strategy, but the idea sort of works.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting strategy, I think, because then it makes your positioning slightly easier. You know what is, and you're going really narrow in terms of your target market, which I think is a very good strategy as long as you can sustain 4 different branding strategies. Okay. Now, coming to the next part is, do you also do physical offline retail as well, or is it purely online?
Purely online, yeah.
Purely online.
We do technically have a warehouse location in Bristol that people could come down and collect stuff from, and the occasional customer does, but really we're designed to be online only.
Okay, so there is no physical retail element involved at all. And do you do B2B as well, or is it just B2C?
Lot of B2B. It's probably 30% B2B, 70% B2C, but probably might be a little bit higher than that split now. But yeah, it's a good.
Okay, that's very good. Now, what capabilities do you, what exactly does excite you to handle all of these 4 brands all at the same time?
I don't know that excite is the right word. It's more that we realised that Greenfeathers can't sustain a business of our size on its own for the whole year. If it did, you'd end up with, I don't know, we'd have to do seasonal staff or something. And I don't really like the idea of doing that. I don't think that's a sustainable way to run a business. So it's more necessity that if we want to maintain the level of staff that we have and maintain the tech stack that we have, then you've got to have something to fill that gap in that 6-month period or that 5-month period where Greenfeathers is in its quiet period, So it's more about looking at Greenfeathers as your seasonal business that gives you that big peak, from October to April, and then how you fill the gap from that sort of April to October period, and that the garden furniture fills that void really nicely. It's summer. It's when everybody's looking for garden furniture. It makes sense that's the time when that brand comes on song, and it means that basically what we do is we transition our marketing and our staff from being predominantly Greenfeathers for that 6 months of the year to then being Van Francis for the 4 or 5 months that Van Francis is on song. And then once Alexander Francis has dropped off, you're back into your planning for peak with Greenfeathers, and it sort of works quite well. You have that sort of 2-month crossover between the brands where you have some time to digest, look at what worked over the last year, and then go forward. So, like I said, I'm not sure it's necessarily exciting. It's more necessity that if we want to keep the environment that we have, then you kind of need a little boost in the summer, and that's what the garden furniture does for us.
I think that is really interesting how you manage all of this across. And that leads me to the next question that I wanted to ask. What are the challenges that you typically have in managing these multi-brand commerce side of it? Then from the perspective of logistics, inventory management, teams, shared resources, branding, marketing, how do you go about? Let's focus on the operational and logistics challenges for now.
Yeah. So operationally and logistically, the biggest headache is cash flow and then forecasting for said cash flow. Because the Greenfeathers, generally speaking, for the last couple of years has been very consistent. We've had good growth, good solid stability. It's been great. Obviously, the garden furniture is very much shaped by what the weather does. And obviously being in the UK, 1 minute it could be glorious sunshine, next minute it can be Storm Dara, and it's terrible. So the biggest challenge actually for logistics and also for purchasing and general operations is you never know when the weather's going to change. Yeah. And so predicting when we might be busy and when we might need some more support for that brand is really difficult. You just don't know what the weather's going to do. And also I think that certainly this year, UK consumers, I think, and I've heard this a lot from other podcasts and other discussions, but I think the UK consumers got to sort of September, October, realised that the summer was gone, and we didn't have a summer, right? It was awful. Yeah. But I think a lot of consumers got to that point in September, October and just went, you know what, sod it. We didn't have weather this year. I'm going to buy the furniture anyway. We're going to go for next year. And I think a lot of people, we sold quite high-end furniture at not too high a discount percentage in that September, October period. I mean, it was like 1,000% up from the year before. Like, so I think a lot of people didn't buy it during the summer, but we had marketed to them quite well, so that when it came to September, October, they just went, "Oh, sod it, I'm just going to buy it anyway." So logistically, that was quite a challenge for us because we weren't set up to send 30, 40 sets of unfinished in October like we had to. So that was a bit all hands on deck for again getting our staff to be able to help with the logistical side of that. And again, our couriers weren't expecting to have that many pickups. So it was a challenge then. And then also, as I said, for forecasting, like, when we went into September and we were sat on lower stock thinking, oh, yeah, we might have overdone this a little bit. To then have all those sales drop in, from 1 month we were panicking to the next month we were like, oh, actually this is fine. So it does, I think certainly the niche that we're in, the fact we're seasonal, does make it more of a challenge. I think if we were two brands that just sold all year round, and maybe had a few peaks for Christmas gifting or summer, it would be easier. But I think we have chosen probably the idea of having two seasonal business probably isn't the smartest idea that we've ever come up with, although it does kind of work. Logistically, it does provide challenges. And I said the cash flow is the main thing. It's just knowing when you've got money to take money out of one brand and put it into another. It's been a real challenge this year.
So how do you then, in that scenario, how do you balance the unique identity of each brand, yet doing justice to them, yet creating efficiencies across operations and business?
I think that the easiest way that we do that is by having one central system. So I know you briefly touched on the idea of inventory management, but I think having order management, inventory management, and marketing all coming out of one combined setup where people don't have to learn different systems for each brand, that's probably our biggest time saver. So again, we use Brightpearl here as our sort of central order management and customer management hub and inventory management hub. We also use Inventory Planner as our sort of inventory forecasting tool. I've said this a few times, but I think Inventory Planner is the best thing that Brightpearl and Sage have brought on to Brightpearl in the whole time it's existed. It's a game changer for your speed at which you can predict where your inventory is going to be, and also then your reporting of inventory. So having it all under that one Brightpearl umbrella and then using Inventory Planner for everything means that my purchasing team can look at Greenfeathers and they can look at Spy Camera and they can look at AF all within the same structure of system without having to learn different things. So actually for our purchasing team, it doesn't really matter whether they're buying stock for Spy Camera, stock for FaceWatch, stock for Greenfeathers, stock for Alexander Francis. The process they go through is the same. So it's actually quite easy to move people around and say that actually we need some help on AF this week. It's quite easy because that's to learn anything new. Again, they're all Shopify websites. So from a marketing perspective, if I want to make changes, my way I make changes would be the same, whether I do it on Greenfeathers or whether I do it on Alexander Francis. I think the tech stack of trying to keep the tech stack as simple as possible and use the same tech stack for all the brands has been the real efficiency saver for us. I think if we didn't have a sort of central management system for this, it would be impossible. You could probably get away with 2 brands on it, but I don't think we could manage all 4 if we didn't have some sort of central source of truth. And that's what we get from Brightpearl Inventory Planner.
And how long did it take you to get to this state where you have a central system managing all your brands? And what was the world before it?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of for us, we were one of the first bigger Brightpearl customers back in the day. So I think that the Open 24/7 business has been on Brightpearl for 12 years now. So I think actually it was more of a fluke that we were using Brightpearl first and then the multi-brands came along once we realized that Brightpearl could do it. I think actually for us, it was relatively easy because our sort of growth was already using Brightpearl. So it wasn't like we had to go out and find a system that would do this. We kind of just grew with Brightpearl. And as Brightpearl added additional features and additional functionality, we just naturally fell into them. Inventory Planner is a really good example of that. Like we were using Inventory Planner before Brightpearl had bought Inventory Planner. We were using Inventory Planner as its own standalone thing for 2 years before Brightpearl bought it. So again, it just happened to fall really nicely that we were using a system that Brightpearl then acquired. which then fed back into our system. Same for our analytics platform. We've been using Conjura now for, I don't know, 18 months. And similar sort of deal. I liked Conjura. I wanted to use Conjura. We were using Conjura, and then Conjura and Brightpearl had a partnership. So just kind of, I think we've been really lucky, and a lot of our tech staff have kind of just fallen together really nicely. And really the only difficulty that we have with the tech stack right now, and again, it's something that we're fixing in the new year. We don't have a very good warehouse management system. That's the real thing that we miss. But again, we'll be working with PeopleVox in the new year. And again, that just happened to fall when they had a partnership with Brightpearl lined up. I'd used it as Furniture Box. I've used it as our system now. I've implemented it a few times with the Brightpearl customers. And now there's not a proper partnership list. So then it just sort of, I think we've been really lucky in that our partners that we work with have all just kind of fallen into line and have got on with each other quite nicely. Whether that continues, I don't know, but I think like I said, I don't think we went out with the idea of finding a system that would support multiple brands. We just kind of lucked into it, and the system we used happened to support it quite well.
That's good. A lot of times I've seen a lot of businesses struggling from that aspect, which becomes a huge bottleneck indeed.
Yeah, it can do for sure. I think as well, like the other thing that we did really well, pat ourselves on the back on, I think we did a really good job of involving, I'll speak about this on a few other talks as well, but we involve our staff in every decision we make. We don't just go and decide things and then do it. We involve every level of our team. So when we're talking about rolling out something new, we have a big team discussion with literally the entire company, and all of us get together and think about ways that we could use it or not use it or could use it or whatever. And so I think we have this kind of natural buy-in with systems as we roll them out. Even simple things like the website. When we've been redesigning the website and we launched new scenes for Greenfeathers back in December last year, I got the entire team's feedback on it, months before we launched it. Like everybody saw it, everybody had their input, everybody had their feedback. And I think that was really important, so that people feel like it's not just you as a director making a decision that you roll out to someone. They feel like they have buy-in, they feel like they have motivation to then go and use it. And I think with all tech, and I've seen this a lot in Brightpearl career as well, if a business leader rolls something out and the team aren't bought into it, you're done. Like you may as well not bother launching it. You've got to have buy-in from people. And that buy-in has to be from everybody that's going to interact with it, not just the most important people, but everyone. Yeah, I think pat ourselves on the back slightly, myself and my co-director Chris and our MD Lee, we do a really good job of making sure that everybody's in the loop and everybody understands why we're doing something. And I think that's operationally, that's really important.
Yeah, no, that's definitely very important indeed. Okay, coming to the next part, how is your product data managed? Do you have any PIM, or how do you centralize all of that?
Yeah, PIM is multiple brands, and PIM is, it's difficult, right? It's really difficult. We currently don't have a dedicated PIN, and that's not because we don't want a dedicated PIN. It's just because we have been in this transition period of releasing a lot of new products on Greenfeathers and also bringing out a new range for Alexander Francis. I think once that development of the product settles down, we probably will move to a dedicated PIN. But right now we use Loop in Microsoft's SharePoint infrastructure. We have a sort of Trello board, and they were managing it on multiple systems, but we have a Trello board that manages the life cycle of a product. So from the stage where we have an idea to sample, to confirm sample, to production ready, to ready to list. And then we also have all of that data for the product, so it's photos, resources, tech specs, apps, infographics, whatever. That all lives within Loop and SharePoint. So Loop's relatively new in the Microsoft world.
Well,
Yeah. But it's actually really cool. And we've done a lot of our new product development on Loop. So we've built a really nice board for Greenfeathers, and a really nice board for Alexander Francis, and we do a lot of the product dev within Loop. And essentially what happens then is once the data's been through the Trello cycle and then is in Loop and ready to go, it's then manually added to Brightpearl, and then we would then go and manually add it to the platforms that we're going to sell it on. So it is a lot of manual work, and it would be nice to evolve that. And I've again at Furniture Box, I spent an awful lot of time banging on about how important a PIM was. I think for us, like I said, we're we don't have 15,000 SKUs. We have probably 1,000 SKUs, maybe 1,200 SKUs. And that maybe make 4,000 products, sellable products. So it's not millions of products that we're managing. I think if we get to the stage of being at sort of, 5, 6, 7,000 sellable products, then we'll again, I said the same thing at Furniture Box, like you have to have a pin at that level. You can't do it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how good your loop setup is, it doesn't matter how good your Airtable setup is or your Trello setup is, it doesn't, like, you just can't do it. You need a dedicated system for it. And so I think that'll be, depending on how the growth goes next year. As I said, the warehouse management system was the most important thing to fix. Once the warehouse management system's in, maybe 2026's project is the full adoption of a PIM, or perhaps looking at a more modular system, which again, I'm quite keen on, to maybe look at how we do order management and how we do warehouse management as standalone pieces, but then looking at a system that allows us to plug in a PIM in the future.
Yeah.
Which again, I've spoken a lot about, but I think the idea of these modular tech stacks is like that's the future, right? Like we're not going to, as much as I'd like Brightpearl, and I've obviously been around Brightpearl for many, many, many years. The idea of a single system that does everything, I don't know how much longer that model is sustainable. I think the idea of being able to plug in and unplug different modules as your business changes, I think that's really, we talk about AI being the future, and a big hater of AI, so I'll say for that. The idea of this modular tech stack, where as your business evolves and as your business changes and as your needs change, you might remove a system and add something else in that fills the void that you have for that particular issue. So I think the modular tech stack idea is like the idea of having something that you could then plug a pin into for next year is, that's probably the direction we're going to go.
Yeah, no, that sounds absolutely logical, because I think future-wise, making your business scalable is very critical. And for that, you need to have that extensibility or composability, where you could replace certain capability with other software, which serves your purpose better. I think that definitely has its own merit. And of course, every approach will have its own pros and cons. And depending upon your business context, you should evaluate it a bit carefully and then go for that approach. But definitely it has its own set of really good merits on its own. Okay, now coming to the next element, product data is one side of it. And then how do you go about marketing across various brands? Because you've got 4 brands. How do you split around your budget? How do you plan what marketing to happen when? Budgeting, scheduling, resource sharing. How does all that happen?
It happens via a very, very complex marketing calendar. Okay. The initial part of the journey is to build a robust marketing calendar, which we've done. We've run that marketing calendar now for, like I say, nearly 2 years now. And that marketing calendar really simply breaks down what activity each brand's going to have each month. And it sounds really basic, but just getting that down at the start of the year and having that plan in place is the first step. You can't do anything until you've got the plan in place. So marketing calendar first. And then we work with dedicated PPC agency and a dedicated SEO agency, and we share that marketing calendar with both agencies, and then they will add their ideas for organic content or a set wish list based on the campaigns that we have. And then our marketing team essentially just action those changes, all those those assets. They're created for when the campaign's ready to go. So calendar, working closely with the agencies. Again, we have great relationships with our 2 agencies that have been massively supportive over the past 18 months now that we've been using them both. And I think that the thing that we've done really well with both agencies, and they've done really well with us, is both brands are very agile. So if they have an opportunity, we're very quick to capitalize on that opportunity. And on the same sort of flip side of that, if we see an opportunity and we go to them and say, look, we've got this new product, we've seen that our customers use it this way, let's hammer that point, they're really, really quick at being able to jump on that and create a campaign or do whatever needs to be done with those marketing assets. And again, I think that the seasonal aspect here is probably what helps us, because we're able to have sort of dedicated resource for that 7 months that Greenfeathers is on sale, and then slightly less dedicated resources for Greenfeathers when AF is on sale. So you're kind of moving the budget and you're moving the sort of area of focus for not only us internally, but for the external partners too. They're on board with that, right? Because for them, the contract doesn't change. They're just moving resource from one brand to the other. So again, I think whether I flipped it again, which I'm totally willing to admit, I might have just got really lucky. But I think we did a lot of research on the partners we were going to work with. And our two partners that we use for both SEO and PPC are totally on board with our idea of being able to move these assets and move these campaigns around. It's a really, and I've used a lot of buzzwords there, but it is really collaborative. It's really agile. They're really quick to respond. And so I think that good marketing calendar, number one, but then also picking the right partners that you're going to work with externally that are willing to support you, and being open and honest with them up front and telling them that's how we're going to operate. If you don't like that, don't work with. It's kind of fairly simple, but they've been amazing, and so the marketing plans are although they're complex, they're very well managed, and I'd say that whether I fluked it with the partners, I don't know, but it's been really good.
That's very good. And James, one more thing. I'm sure with all of these, because most of your product range is around the camera, so you would have the customers buying from multiple brands. So you would have one customer buying across multiple brands as well. Now, would the customer know that this is all coming from one house of business, or would they not have any idea? And how do you go about communicating your marketing strategy or positioning across to your overlapping customers?
Yeah. So we do treat them as 4 separate individual brands. So your marketing you would get from Greenfeathers and the marketing that you would get from Spy Camera, for example, would be totally different marketing. Okay. Obviously, excuse me, if you were smart as a customer, you'd be able to see that the registered company that both brands are under is open 24/7. So if you were looking for it, you could find it. But we don't want to advertise it. I mean, originally back in the day, we did have everything advertised as Open 24/7. So you would get an email campaign from Open 24/7, not from the individual brand. And that didn't work.
Yeah.
We use Klaviyo for our email marketing as just an example. Klaviyo has 4 individual Klaviyo accounts with 4 different sending domains that are relevant to the brands. And also the branding is very different across the 4 brands, so there's no way that you would ever get confused between the two. The only time it does become complex is if you were looking for support or help with your product. If you were to email one of our generic support emails, then you will probably get a reply from an Open 24/7 email address. So it's not uniform across the board, but it is something we're trying to get better at. Again, we use Gorgeous as our sort of CRM help platform. And that Gorgeous is really good at breaking down tickets by what brand they've come from, but occasionally we do get it wrong. So, sometimes a customer will email Spy Camera and we'll reply from Greenfeathers. Like that does happen every now and again. But again, most people don't mind that because we're not trying to hide the fact that brands are all run under one umbrella and they're all at the same address. Like we're not trying to hide that. But we do want you to feel like you are getting a unique experience when you buy from Greenfeathers or you buy from Amazon, you buy from like it is supposed to be.
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. And how are you looking to address? Is there any, or is this an acceptable flaw in the customer service process that you're going to keep it like that? We are okay with it because the percentage is very low and customers don't mind it. So we're just going to let it be as is. Or is there some plan to some way of addressing this kind of problem?
The biggest problem is that a lot of the email access is quite legacy. So if you were a customer, and again, with Spy Camera specifically, we've got customers that bought from us back in 2008. So they are still using their old email accounts that they've been emailing since then. So most new customers, 99% of new customers, this wouldn't affect. So to answer your question, it doesn't really matter. It's all of our legacy customers that most of them are on first name basis with most of our team anyway. So it doesn't, and I think like if you look at the Trustpilot results on Greenfeathers as an example, even the Trustpilot results on Francis and Spy as well. Like Greenfeathers is the brand that we've put the most time into over the past 12, 18 months. if you look at the feedbacks that we have, like customer service is super important to us. It's the real important part of the brand. And so I think if somebody gets an email from an incorrect email address, they don't care as long as they're getting good service. And I think the Trustpilot results speak for themselves. But we pride
Absolutely.
ourselves on that. So I think it's a problem that in time, because it's a legacy, in time it'll just fix itself, I think.
Got it. Now, you'd mentioned that almost 30% of the business does B2B and then the rest of it is all B2C. Now, in the context of a multi-brand business, how do you handle the unique fulfillment challenges, which are quite unique? Because B2B will have its own fulfillment process, B2C will have its own fulfillment process. You know, sending various boxes and sending a small package, they are two different problems to handle, really. How do you handle all of these in your multi-brand context?
Yeah. It is one of the more complex elements, as you've rightly said. We essentially treat the B2B customers the same way we would treat our B2C customers. So we use the same couriers, we use the same packaging, we use the same boxes. The only difference is when you start getting to pallet levels. But again, because the Alexander Francis brand is already using pallets, because that's how we ship,
Yeah.
when a trade order comes through for Greenfeathers and it is 3 pallets of stock, for example, we already have the pallet network because of Alexander Francis. So actually, for us, it is complex insofar as you have to go measure the pallets and get dimension right, and especially if it's going to Europe now with bloody Brexit. Don't get me raging about Brexit, but it it the complication is actually the paperwork and getting clearance done without any problems. That's been the biggest challenge. And most of our trade customers are European, especially for Greenfeathers. We have a large reseller network, a large distribution network within Europe because again, sending from the UK, it's so hard to send D2C. I mean, it is possible and we do it, but it's really complex and it's really expensive. So what we've tried to do is work with a network of partners in Europe so that if a German customer comes to us and says, I want one of your cameras headquartered being out of Germany, I almost don't want you to buy it from me. I want you to go to my German reseller and buy it from them instead because it's way easier for everybody and it'll be cheaper for the customer that way. And so we've got quite a nice little network, within the Nordics, within Germany, Austria, France, Spain, Italy. We've got these smaller brands that resell our products. So the wholesale element to them is, like I say, whether it's a pallet or whether it's multiple boxes, we've got the pallet network in place because of Alexander Francis. We've got decent rates for FedEx and DHL if we want to do multiple boxes to Europe. And we've kind of just learnt by doing it. Like I'm not going to lie, we've had a lot of problems with the whole customs clearance Brexit issues.
Yeah, of course.
We've kind of lived that journey because we've had so many problems. We kind of know how to deal with it. And I think we're, touch wood, 9 times out of 10, we can send a shipment now, whether it's a pallet or whether it's 1 box or whether it's 20 boxes. We can send that via our network of couriers, let's say whether that's FedEx or DHL or Palletways or Mid or whoever. We can 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, 9.5 times out of 10, we can send it reliably now. And that's just through learning and getting it wrong. And, we've had some massive customer charge. We sent a really good story. I think we sent a small bird box sample. So it's a little wooden bird box. It's a tiny little shipment. £10 value. DHL charged us £742 for the privilege of clearing that through customs. So like I say, we've made some mistakes. We've learned from those mistakes. And I think again, this is the whole point of having a good engaged team, right? Like when something goes wrong, our team don't flap or panic or get annoyed or whatever. They're empowered to go and make decisions that we then deal with the consequences of. I think we've just learned how to do it now. And again, actually the multi-brand element makes the ability to do B2B easier because we already have all of the network in place for the Alexander Francis stuff that supports Greenfeathers. And again, for Alexander Francis, it doesn't matter whether we send 1 pallet to a customer or whether we send 7. Like the process for doing it is the same. So actually the multiple brands kind of support themselves in the B2B aspect. So yeah, it does make it easier.
Favor in terms of offering you, efficiencies of economy. Yeah, I think that's really well placed overall. Now, in terms of scaling your brands, what strategies have you found to be effective to scale these multiple brands together without potentially losing focus on one brand or, you know, putting one or two, deprioritizing one or two brands?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I definitely think we've prioritized brands more than others. I think that's unavoidable. I think if you tried to go into this thinking that you could prioritize all four brands with the same level of intensity, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice. I don't think that's possible. I think also naturally you're going to gravitate to the brand that has the most growth potential because logically that makes sense. And I think we've definitely done that with Greenfeathers. I've spoken a lot about it, but Greenfeathers is our kind of golden egg. What the other brand allow us to do is, and I said it before, that they allow us to have the stability through the year. But that doesn't really change the fact that the golden egg is Greenfeathers. What we could do better, and what we are trying to do better, is to put more of a focus on smaller brands like Coastwatch that really have the ability to do all year round trade at a pretty high level. I'll be totally honest, like we haven't done a good enough job of prioritizing the other brands. Like we just haven't. And I think that's okay if you were aware of that. And I think we are aware of that. So I think the main elements of growth for us would be getting Close Watch and Spy Camera back to a stage where they would trade at a higher level than they do now and a level that they used to trade at. And part of that is shifting the marketing focus away from Greenfeathers a little bit and onto the other brands. And that's a leadership thing for us as directors to manage. And like I say, I think we haven't done a good enough job of that over the last year, but that's okay because Close Watch is kind of sat in the shadow of Greenfeathers a little bit. And I honestly, if you're aware of that and your marketing plan is working for the brands that you are putting all the effort into, then it's okay. I think the problem obviously becomes if you put all of your effort into one of the brands and that brand doesn't work, then obviously you've got a problem. And again, whether we fluked it or not, the growth that we've had on Greenfeathers in the past 18 months has been absolutely stellar. So you kind of want to keep pumping that and keep the sort of the momentum behind it almost, and ride the wave for a little longer until you have the opportunity to maybe take a step back and look at one of the other brands. So how you manage that, I think, like I said, you would be doing yourself a disservice if you said that all four brands were going to get the same treatment as the main one, because it just doesn't work that way. And that's okay, as long as you're focused and you're looking at it. And the way that we manage this is we have a really, really good, and I'll shout out Kayla Wilson, who's the marketing director at Furniture Box. She has built this amazing budgeting sheet that I still use now. We used it at Furniture Box. I use it now here. And that budgeting sheet gives you an idea of your marketing efficiency ratio or your total acquisition or total advertising cost of sale across the multiple brands. So as long as you're seeing that your marketing spend is in line with where your revenue is, i.e. they're both going up at the same percentage or they're both going down at the same percentage, then it's kind of okay. And that sheet is it's our gospel, it's our Bible, it's the thing that shapes the decision. So seems as long as you've got something like that in place to benchmark and understand where you are, and then it's okay not having the focus on all four brands. It's okay to drop focus on one of them for a bit, as long as what you're doing on the main brand or the brand that you're focused on is working.
And it brings returns and it justifies the investment that you're putting in all the four, right? Okay. I think how the time has gone by, I just didn't realize, it's been 47 minutes. We've already been talking for. Now it's already a long one. Okay. Before we go away, James, of course, the AI is the latest buzzword. I want to hear your thoughts, opinion. Do you see any relevance in your world, and what do you think of it in general?
First of all, I think as somebody that's been around tech for as long as I have, I built my first computer back in 1998. So yeah, I'm an old man now. And I don't want to be that old man yelling at clouds meme, but I am a little bit like the old man yelling at clouds. Like, the fact that we're still calling it AI is like, it's not AI, it's an LLM. Can we stop calling it AI? It's not intelligent. It just isn't. It's an LLM, and yes, an LLM has a purpose. And I mean, look at how badly Apple have fumbled the ball with Apple AI. It's completely pointless. Like it's utterly it. Apple don't get launches wrong very often, but and I'm a bigger Apple fanboy as anybody is. Like I've used Apple devices forever, but the way they fumbled the ball with AI is just it shows you how not ready AI is for commercial application. Like it's just not there yet. And there are, you see it in America with brands like Honda and stuff using AI in their advertising campaigns and stuff, generation content. I kind of get it, but I'm so against the idea of using it. Like we should be using AI to make mundane tasks easier.
Yep.
And we shouldn't be using AI to replace creative tasks where I don't care how good an AI is, an AI model, an AI generation platform can never replace the creativity of a human. It just can't. And until we get quantum computing or till we get computing that understands humanity, an emotion, it just can't do it. So for me, I would much prefer to pay a creative, and I still do, we still work with freelancers writing blog content for us. We still pay our SEO agency to create content for us. The moment that switches to AI is the moment I dump that agency and I move somewhere else because I don't have interest in having AI generated content everywhere. I believe that we should be using humanity to do that still. And what we should be using AI for is the mundane tasks. Like I want an AI robot to make me a cup of tea, right? Like that's what I want AI for. I want AI to help drive my car when I can't be bothered to drive it. Like that kind of use of AI, I understand and I get because it makes my life easier. What I
Yeah.
don't like is AI that replaces jobs that it'll never be as good at. And it's just a cost-cutting exercise by a marketing exec that is under a massive budget constraint because nobody's got any money. Like that's not what we should be using it for. So it's my rant, but I'm so done with the idea of of any form of AI. I mean, we've tried to use it a few times here, like tried to get it to generate some content for us just to see what it would do. I've paid for a Chat GPT subscription, which I've only done that because I want to see what it's capable of and to use it and then realize how far away it is from being commercially viable is incredible. You look at I know that's obviously Sora's had its massive update and it's supposed to be all singing and dancing now, but it still is terrible. And I saw there was a BBC article the other week, and it was about a woman that had got defrauded out of 17 grand because she'd basically made an AI girlfriend online. And they were doing live chat with each other, they were having conversations, and whoever the fraudster was had basically AI generated a video of this so-so girlfriend talking to her partner who's a real person. And the video content, it's laughably bad. It's terrible. Go look at the article on the BBC website. It's so bad. And they've got an AI expert on like the little show that they're doing for it. Well, if you don't know what you're looking for, it's quite hard to tell this is AI generated. It's like the woman's got 4 mouths. She's got her blinking, two sets of eyes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have hands because I still can't do hands. You've got this massive distorted image. You're like, how would somebody ever fall for that? Like, that is so clearly not real. And yet people do fall for it. So, I think that's obviously the Elon and all of his nonsense now as well. Like, we're using AI for all the things that is bad and we're using it for none of the things that are good. And that's my biggest problem with it is just, the social media presence for it and how it's going to change the landscape of elections or news stories. It's just, we
Mind-boggling.
just need to put it in the bin. Yeah, it's got to go in the bin, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. It is going to be interesting how things are going to pan out in the next 3 to 5 years, actually, how it evolves.
Yeah, how it evolves. And like I said, commercially, if it has an application in the future, I'm all ears to listen to it. But for right now, for me, it serves no purpose other than nefarious purposes. It just doesn't make sense.
Excellent. And before we sign off, James, what advice would you give if you were to restart? What advice would you give to somebody who's running a multi-brand e-commerce business and what things he could do better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What would I do better? I think I would, and this is something that I've carried from my furniture box time. but we had a motto at Furniture Box that was fail fast. And I think I would have, if I could go back and live this journey again, I would have tried the fail fast approach quicker than I have now. Like we've done a few things and we flogged a few horses that we probably should have just realised weren't going to work and bin them off sooner. Whereas I think we stayed quite loyal to doing things with some of our partners that perhaps we should have realised was not going to work earlier on. So I think fail fast is, especially with multi-brand, you don't have time to have a brand not be successful. You've got to try and get that brand to a successful state as quickly as possible, right? You just don't have the resources to keep funneling a bad idea. So I think fail fast would have been the main thing. And I think also the secondary thing would be, alongside fail fast, would be make sure that your tech stack supports what you're trying to do. I think be really clear on what you're understanding where your holes are in your tech stack, and then finding the workarounds that allow you to still operate your business alongside those flaws. No tech stack's going to be perfect. We all know that. Every tech stack's going to have a flaw, but understanding where those flaws are and how to work around them is especially a multi-brand, it's really key. So I think that's probably where I would say my top tips are.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. It's been absolutely wonderful and enlightening to, have this conversation and to learn so much more about your business and how you've been tackling so many challenges and interesting mix of 4 different brands. It's been absolutely beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you so much.